the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer. Someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer. Baseball in the summer.
VMAC, Legendary Rivals podcast, and pretty great way to start a Friday morning. We've got Shane Toohey of the McMaster Baseball Marauders with us. Shane, how are you doing these days?
Yeah, things are going pretty well. Got a wife and a 15-year-old son, and working away in the medical device industry, and life's pretty good overall.
Yeah, I would say I think medical device and that industry has probably been pretty nuts for. Were there any implications from COVID just in terms of a disruption for what you're doing? I would assume that there's been supply chain and all kinds of crazy logistical things you've been dealing with.
Yeah, it's definitely been different. For me, luckily, the company I was with, was in a good spot in terms of COVID, some of the products that we offered. So for me, it was pretty good in terms of not, really missing work. But the big challenge was just, how do we interact with our customers, right? And, kind of Hoots mentioned it on his podcast, him being a nurse, is just the shortage of staff and not knowing what's happening. And then for us, not being able to support our customers the way we normally would. So, a lot of the stuff that I do is working with nurses and doctors and, doing training of new staff and those types of things. And they just didn't have, time for us to do those types of things. And that continues to be an ongoing thing. A lot of the experienced, physicians and nurses have retired. So there's lots of gaps in terms of staffing and lots of new staff coming on. So, even though you could say COVID's done in some ways, it's really still having a long lasting effect with a lot of staff shortages and a lot of ongoing, burnout with the doctors and the nurses. So, kudos to them for the amount of work they do, the great things that they do for the patients, the amount of support that they give for their patients. I don't think people realize how much, how many struggles they go through just on a day-to-day basis, just, to get through their day without having the resources that they need. So for me, I just try to do whatever I can to help them out and try to make their lives easier, because they, everybody's touched by, people, be it your family physicians, a nurse, you always know of somebody that you're related to or in your family or a friend who's, really battling this stuff, and somebody when you really need something, is there to support you and your family.
Shane, it's funny. I just feel that you're going to be hosting your own podcast shortly on, medical devices. It'll be a great way to train people en masse, I think finding solutions and learning to work a little differently, is interesting. It's been a big development. As you know, we have my business, a lot of face-to-face contact, and you're starting to see more of a blend. You don't do all that ridiculous driving and spending so much time caught in traffic, and maybe some of the preliminary or the follow-up stuff is now done through video or Zoom, these kinds of things. And but there's no substitute for being in front of a person. So
definitely, and that's one of the things we had to learn with COVID. If you're training people, how do you do training, hands-on training with people, through Zoom or Teams or something like that, trying to figure out new ways to do things, like you said. And, it worked out, in some ways it worked out really good for some of those remote areas that you can't get to set up those different types of things where they can still get access to support. But now for me, I had worked in, back into the sales side of thing after working in marketing for 12 years. It's nice to actually get back out in front of customers, and people want to see you now, which is fantastic. And it's also nice too. I used to do a lot of national and international travel, which was great in a lot of ways, especially when you're younger and you don't have family and those ties, to get to see lots of different places in the world. And now actually having getting back into sales, and it's so nice also not to sit in front of a screen all the time doing conference calls and Teams calls and all that type of stuff, where you actually get to go out and see people every day. And, in some ways you get to see the fruits of your labor a lot quicker than when you're in marketing, where you do, planning a few years out, and, it takes a while for that stuff to kind of come through. So it's nice to kind of get some more of that immediate, gratification, if you will, on, seeing the results from your actual work, and seeing the results, up front with patients, and how they are affected by the things that we do, and how our doctors and nurses, what they do every day.
Well, it's amazing. We'll touch on your wide world of travel and the fact that you're could have your own reality show just based off of where you've been, likely. But why don't we circle back before you were even at McMaster, and sitting there probably in a purple Jesus beer soaked residence room, thinking, I'm being called to a meeting with Bill Newton. We go back to where you grew up, and how you developed a love for sports and baseball and those kinds of things. So why don't we start there, because you'd have a lot of teammates who might just know snippets of that.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up in Binbrook, so some people know where it is, some people don't. It's basically a little small town that's kind of south of Hamilton. And when I grew up there, I think we didn't even have a stoplight when I first grew up. And I don't think we got our first stoplight till I was, 12, 13 years old. And for us, going to get groceries, we had to go down to the Stony Creek or go to Hamilton, 20, 30-minute drive to get groceries. So it was a pretty small town, one of those towns you grow up and, everybody in the town. So I kind of got involved that way. My dad was coaching hockey, and I was, 3 years old, and he's driving me to the rink. So my mom can look after my brothers and my sister, got a family of 5 kids, 4 boys and a girl, my sister being the youngest. So, just to get one kid out of the house, was helpful to my mom. So yeah, I'd be, at the rink, and I'm 3 years old, sitting on the bench, watching pucks fly by my head. You can never do that with a kid now. So that's kind of how I kind of started with my love for sports. It was just my dad, taking me out to the rink at that young age. And then, a couple years older, you get into hockey and starting to learn that. And like most kids, you do hockey in the winter and baseball in the summer, and just, started off, my dad got me into T-ball, and just kind of growing on from there, go through T-ball, and then you get into Little League. And again, small town, I think Little League now you have, major, minor Little League, kind of 8, 9, and 10, and 11 and 12 years old. For us in Binbrook, or Glanbrook is what we were kind of called, is, we didn't have that 8, 9, 10, 11 minor major. It's like the 8-year-olds play with the 12-year-olds. So you kind of learn pretty fast. There's a pretty big gap between 8 years old and 12 years old in skill levels and physically. So, I was always a small kid, so I had to learn pretty quick. So yeah, I grew up playing Little League there. Was lucky enough in 1985. It's small town that we played in the Little League World Series down in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So growing up as a kid, so that was a pretty amazing experience to travel down there, be part of that big event, meet, kids from all across the world. So it's like, growing up as a kid, that really, keeps your excitement for the sport going forward. And for me, growing up, I played, hockey and baseball in the summer, played for Glanbrook my whole entire life, both on the hockey side and on the baseball side, right up through, bantam, midget, junior, and, playing senior ball till I was, 35, 36. Always played in the same organization my whole entire life. So, yeah, it was a great little town to grow up into. It changed, so much. Now it's, it's huge how many people are there, and how many people who I grew up with who had gone away have come back and now, have raised their families in Binbrook now. It's just such a big, big difference. And every time I go up to visit my parents, it just blows me away how much it has changed in terms of just the number of amenities there, the people there. They, they have grocery stores and a gas station and all that stuff that we didn't have as kids. So it's a big change. During my time too, growing up, like I said, I had a big family. So three brothers and a sister, and I'm the oldest of that group. So growing up, a lot of kids, got to know a lot of kids just from the different age groups with my brothers. I helped coach at high school. So there's some at Orchard Park High School. So some connection there with some of your Brock guys like Jess Dixon and Rick Bottomley and those guys. I helped coach in high school. Those guys also played with my brother Mark and my brother Brent. So a lot of those kind of guys from around Stony Creek, Hamilton, who are younger and kind of came in that second wave of kids to, the university baseball, where people, that I kind of had known, and guys, same thing, guys like Brad Arms and, some of those guys from around the Hamilton area were a lot of the guys that, I grew up with or kind of knew from a young age and then got connected with through high school. And then, they kind of started to hear about, the university program and this new type of thing that was going on. And so I, helped coach at the high school with my dad and a couple of guys who coached me, and helped coach some midget and junior baseball in Glenbrook. So, went from playing to coaching, continuing to coach, working at some sports camps. So just, a lot of baseball, still play, co-ed softball these days, where, kind of the primary goal of the game is to drink before, during, and after now. So little less intense than what it used to be, although probably the worst injury I had came from playing co-ed softball. Not last summer, but the summer before, I had to, I got stepped on tagging a runner at second base and, had to have 6 screws and a plate put in my arm. And it's like, how does this happen playing co-ed softball? But it's the way it goes. It's still a lot of fun. My son laughs at, it's so much fun. One of the teams we have because we pitch to ourselves, you have the pitching screen to protect, the pitcher. And one of the teams we played, they have a cup holder on their pitching screen. Pitcher has a beer in there. Line drive comes back, hits the beer can, explodes all over. That's my son's, highlight of my time in co-ed softball. Not any of the plays, not any of the home runs, not any of the wins, but, the exploding beer cans. A lot of fun. My sister plays with me, and it's a great time. And it's just, always still having that connection to the game and having a lot of fun with it.
So, obviously you've spoken a lot about family and you're the oldest, there's a little bit of pressure that comes with that particular endeavor. You get siblings looking up to you and looking to you to make decisions and stuff. And I think, your story reminds me an awful lot of Doug Lunny, where he's, like got this family that's just centered in their geography and everyone kind of sticks close together. Is that kind of what drove your decision to go to McMaster? Was that it was the local school?
Yeah, that was definitely played into it for me. It was close. And for me at the time, growing up in a big family, for me, I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of money to be able to go and stay in residence or something like that somewhere. So for me, it was close. I was able to, commute. I ended up getting a partial scholarship through my dad's work for academics and for sports. So that helps, supplement, the cost of going to school. So it was definitely great. The program was there. So I, started in phys ed, went into the kinesiology program, which was what I wanted, to do and take. And then they had a good program at the time. So for me, it worked out well. And in the long run, it worked out well too, just on, the baseball side, just having some of that local experience, local contacts and all those things as kind of, baseball and the program moved forward eventually.
That's great. And do you remember what it is that was McMaster really your only choice? We all had to put 3 down, but you're kind of like, okay, I definitely want to go to Mac. Do you remember what you wanted to take?
I applied to 3 different schools, got into all of them. I applied to Brock, actually was one of them, because again, it was somewhat close enough that I really could have commuted if I needed to. And I also just kind of on a whim applied to Laurier, and I got into that as well. But pretty much Mac was going to be, I knew, my first choice. I had known people that had gone there as well, and they liked their time there, liked their experience there. So for me, that was always pretty much going to be my first choice. And then, once got the acceptance, so that was the one I selected and went to.
That's pretty exciting. And so you're kind of an original Marauder, so you must have had some exposure to Jason Gwindon. So
Jason.
How did you come to find out that there was a baseball team there?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Jason was actually a year ahead of me at school, so I, kind of recognized his face just from being around the program. But it's kind of funny, I wasn't, I was commuting, so I wasn't living in residence. But two of my good friends were actually living in residence, and of course, as it all seems to go back to and tie into Woodstock Hall, um, it was at Woodstock Hall that I ran into Jason, and it was, at a hall party and the Purple Jesus and all that type of stuff. Kind of, I was just there at a hall party, and somebody had been talking to him. They said, "Hey, you're a baseball guy. Why don't you go talk to this guy? He's trying to get a baseball team going." So, went and said, "Hey, yeah, I hear you got a baseball team going. Yeah, I'd definitely be interested." And I think the next day was the day that they were playing up at Guelph. And luckily I had a car, and I'm like, okay, my stuff was in the car. What time's the game? And I headed up there, and that was kind of the starting point. And again, like I said, ties all back again to Woodstock Hall, which is, where Jason was. And, I look back and I just can't, the amount of things that he did in order just to get a team going. And I don't know how we got in contact with all these different people to get connected with games, and, in Guelph, with Brock, and, we played Humber College and Durham and McGill. And, it wasn't like there was the internet where you could just search somebody up. He's making all these phone calls and sending out letters and just reaching out to people through his network on, getting this baseball up and running while he's a full-time student. And it was just, for him, you see the amount of passion and the work that he put in and the dedication that he put in, knowing that, this really wasn't something that was going to be for him. It was for all these people that were going to come after him. And he saw, the value in doing that for so many other people, and really just trying to make a mark and, help people out, and just, for other people to follow that passion that he had, and that he might not necessarily be able to take advantage of because that just wasn't in place.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, from that perspective, it's the early days were really hard from a communication standpoint. Like there was pockets of baseball. So, there's a baseball team at Durham College, and there was a little bit of an effort in Quebec, and there was something going on the East Coast, and there's always been something kind of half independent going on at UBC. And but you're right, there's no internet, there's no efficient way to do this. And it sounds like you got roped in, not even really having had a conversation, to play in that infamous game in Guelph where you guys played Durham College, and you guys had 8 guys on the field, right? Is that how that happened?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And, of course, we've all heard about the blue uniforms, but we get there, we didn't even have uniforms. We were just like a bunch of guys showing up at the park, trying to figure out how we can get bats, all that type. It's like, how do we even get equipment to this game? It's a lot of it's, kind of last minute. But, there's guys just like, okay, yeah, we want to do this. Like, let's go out and play a game and get some stuff done. And yeah, it was an interesting situation. The Durham College was, yeah, you've heard the stories about Durham College and some of those challenges that we had with them and against them. And it was still like, it was a good experience to get started. But yeah, you see these guys rolling in with a bus and 20 guys and matching, jackets and bags and everything else.
And you guys are the ultimate motley crew.
We're like the bad news bears
coming to the school yet driving who gets lost. And Steve McGrail, you've had one conversation in a drunken hall party, and you just ragtag it. But the reality is, and that's a long distance from what it would, reporting to a team that's, got varsity status and, OUA sanctioning and the rest of it. But these are the realities of what it takes to launch a program. It starts with 1, then it rolls to 2, and then it's 5 guys, and it's 6 guys and a coach. So it might be interesting, it's a snowball that rolls downhill. And without that first spark, there's no McMaster baseball. So people, need to understand that the fact that you loaded up and went to Guelph, not knowing anything about anyone or what it is you're headed into, that's the kind of mentality it takes to get things done in life. So pretty interesting in that, you know, you don't even have bats, or, you know, maybe Billy would have had his catching equipment maybe, but
Yeah, well, yeah,
uh,
because we didn't have any, so we were lucky that he had some of that stuff, and it was just I think in general it just speaks to like the passion that people had for baseball, and just like how this was really something that people wanted, and they were willing to kind of do anything to get it started, and a lot of those guys they stuck through it, right? Like Todd was one of the first guys, Billy and McGrail and like all those guys, like they started and they just wanted to get it going and pretty much would do, what they could. Like, Todd talked about how he got roped into being on our executive board, whatever that was, with, Billy being our president and, me being the vice president and treasurer with no money to even have a treasury. So it was just, how do we get some guys that want to step up and just do something? And, like I said, those blue uniforms, everybody makes fun of, but, we had no money and we went to Litson's and like, I think they just wanted to get rid of us. We have these jerseys who basically give you cheap kind of just to get us out, So that's kind of how they started. They definitely weren't the nicest. I don't know, but it's all we could get at the time. They didn't match, school colors, anything, but it was better than what we had before, right? So
Shane, that's the best role ever, when you're the treasurer of the team and it's the number of empties is your budget, right?
that's right. Yeah.
How much of these can we return? And then you get innovative about, the techniques that you guys use to raise money. So it would have been the typical triumvirate of things that university kids think of at that time, which are, let's have ourselves a T-shirt that we can sell. So you guys have an infamous T-shirt that we're going to replicate for this weekend, which is, I think it's a 33 ounces long,
33 inches, 30 ounces. Swing it, baby.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So
yeah, I remember it.
Dust that off and get a 2024 version of it with proceeds going to support the recent scholarship. So we're having a little bit of fun with that stuff, as you know. But when you're a student and you're just trying to figure it out, these are life lessons that you learn about being innovative and finding ways to get things done. So tell me about, now that you're kind of Jason, I guess, as you get through that game at Guelph and Jason graduates, right, somewhere in there, and then you're working more with Bill and Steve McGrail and others to just take that from being some exhibition games, and you guys play your first season in 1994. Tell me what that was like. And you guys went to Montreal, right? And you beat out the hated Durham College to reach the national final against McGill. Tell me about that year.
Yeah, so that was actually like a pretty amazing year. It was kind of like the first year where it seemed things were starting really to come together. We had an amazing group of guys. Like, we hear about the number of kind of all-star guys that we had on the field, which was amazing. That weekend going up to Montreal was, it was, super memorable weekend. It was so much fun going, feeling like it was a real game, where you're traveling, the travel to get there. There's lots of different stories on that. But, by going away to a game, felt like going to a real school, a real program, and playing against McGill, which was, a good team. We got there, we played 3 games while we were there. We lost the first game in extra innings. I pitched that game, complete game. The second game, I can't remember what happened. And then the third game, Dazzy started that game. I was playing short, and I ended up pitching. He got pulled in the first inning, and I ended up pitching the rest of that game. So back in those days, you didn't have a lot of extra guys to go in and do things, but it was a lot of fun. Kind of open your eyes a little bit just to how much, how much opportunity there was for a league like that to grow. And then just from there, it's just like, really having those games, and Todd talked about it too. It's just like, people on the bench, charting players, where they're hitting, all those types of things. And it just started to feel like a real program as opposed to just a bunch of guys getting together and going and, playing on the field. So it was really, really exciting to be in, at that time, a national championship. So yeah, it was a great feeling. It was a great, excitement. It was also good too because, people were starting to hear about the program, about the league and those different things. And like I said, having my brother being a little bit younger and playing with a lot of those other guys, for them just to talk about it. When I was coaching the high school, these kids starting to hear about it, saying, "Oh, what schools have that? What programs?" So it helped people that didn't know was, something that was an option for them to kind of get interested in it and excited about it. And, even though it's kind of the early seeds, it was starting to kind of get that message out. And it was just kind of one of those things. It's just the grapevine, guys talking to other guys, talking to other guys. And I mean, it's probably the same for, the way things went with Brock. It's just a lot of guys talking to a lot of guys. You see a friend in the summer and it just spreads and spreads and spreads. So yeah, that Montreal season was, playing that game. Montreal was so much fun. Playing in the national title was a lot of fun. I just remember it was a beautiful sunny day in the fall, and a great day for baseball. Unfortunately, we didn't win it, but it was a great day. I just remember the McGill coach sitting outside the dugout in his lawn chair. I don't know what the deal was with that, but every game that was his thing. So.
Yeah, that gentleman was named John Elias and was a very famous Montreal Expos player and scout. Yeah, there's lots of podcast material of me spouting off about John Elias. So interesting cat to be sure, and he's lucky he didn't get a ball in the ribs from me. So
you can say that about a lot of guys, I think.
Yeah, I feel that that's kind of was my thing. I mean, it just added to that. Like if you throw the ball fairly hard and you're kind of big and left-handed with some wild mechanics, it just helps to kind of add to that. Feeling uncomfortable in the batter's box. Shane and I was really not. I really loved throwing inside because I liked seeing people back out of the batter's box a little bit. And later in my career, when I got a better curveball, it really helped because then they're backing out, and then you throw a curveball, and they're just flailing at it. So, but the one thing I will say about John Elias was he, I think because he played pro in a much different era, and as a coach, he kind of had like that swagger, a little bit of swagger that was really strange. He lipped. He was kind of lippy, and he kind of pissed people off. Like I could see you guys being pissed off because he's sitting there on a lawn chair and probably making it look like they're just going to roll you guys out the door. And it's any great stories though. Of course, from what I hear, it was quite the adventure getting to Montreal. So you guys went in your own vehicles and had like a whole bunch of people. Probably couldn't get away with it today. And also with the hotel rooms,
Oh
we
yeah,
were all jammed into a few.
I think we had
hotel
6 or 8
rooms. Of course,
guys.
money's a problem, right?
Yeah, 6 or 8 guys in a hotel room. I remember, guys sleeping in the bathtub with blankets and pillows, and I guess they wanted something a little bit quieter. But guys waking them up in the middle of the night, going to the bathroom. Yeah, I remember going. Greg Carter had this little Honda Civic and just piling stuff into there. Another guy, I can't even remember his name, but he had this like Astro van, and it was just this beat up old Astro van, and it was one of those things. Is it actually going to make it? Are we going to make it there in this Astro van? And I don't even know how we got everybody up there. And it's not like you have GPS and you're trying to get to the hotel, and we got these maps spread out everywhere. And then, Jason's trying to get us under control, but we're in Montreal, right? So everybody wants to go out, have a good time. And, he had a curfew, but I'm not sure how well that curfew, was adhered to.
I was going to say, you let Bill Newton loose on St. Catherine or Crescent Street? Probably not, eh?
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, but again, we're all like 19, 20-year-old guys. We're there in Montreal to have fun and play baseball, but it was a great time. I mean, again, it was just such a good group of guys. And some of like the older guys that like me that didn't get to go to the next step and get to play in the national championship game like those guys did in '97. But guys like guys like Joe Davis and Trevor Lawson and Steve Groh and Dozzy, like it was just a really good bunch of guys that had a lot of fun. going to the park. But yeah, that trip was a lot of fun. And again, it's like, we had no budget. That's why we had 6 guys or 8 guys in a room. Just because, we had to pay for our gas there. We had to figure out, how are we going to get a hotel room? All these different, I had to was borrowing equipment from my summer team. So we'd have bats and balls and all those different things to play with. So that was a thing, lucky thing that I was local. So like even just trying to get diamond time, I knew kind of where to go to get the permits. I'd umpired in the summer, so I kind of knew, the people that organize, the umpiring for the junior games and the senior games. So I was able to reach out to those guys and say, hey, this is what we're doing. You'd be interested in umpiring games for us. And then we got to pay for balls. We got to pay for umpires. So, just kind of figuring out how are we going to pay for all this stuff, was a challenge. But like you said, it teaches you a lot of good life lessons on, how to be creative. And, if you really want to do something, you can get it done.
Well, and you certainly bond with your teammates when there's 4 of you in a bed.
Yeah. So true.
Shane, did you see, so, you go through the 94 experience and you get to the final, and were you with the team in 95 still?
Yep. Yeah. Well, 96 was my last year. Okay. So yeah, you've heard the infamous stories. That was, about Don Graves coming in and Hank coming into Newt's apartment at Bates. So yeah, I had put in, because we had no money to put an ad and we didn't really even know what we were doing. So, I knew the Spectator had, free ads. So, I called the Spectator, put a free ad in the paper that, hey, we're looking for coaches for the MAC baseball team. And then there's some real beauties that contacted us. But, Don, like, you would not believe some of these guys. And I know we had the clipboard, and now I'm looking back on it, like, I can't even comprehend what Don and Hank must have been thinking coming in and seeing Newt and I in this smelly beer-soaked room, asking them these questions, and like thinking, I was like, I can't believe these guys decided that this was a good thing to do. like, what are they getting into? He's got these guys, 20 years old, asking them questions. These guys got no money. These guys got no uniforms. They don't even have support from the university, but they got this baseball program that's running. Yeah, like I said, I so much credit to Don and Hank for sticking through it and kind of pushing us forward, because we definitely weren't smart enough to know what we were getting ourselves into, and we weren't going to be there long enough to really push it forward. But yeah, like it blows my mind that those guys came in and decided that they wanted to back this program, and back, Newt and I, because, really at that point, they were the only guys that they knew from this program, and their first experiences going into Newt's apartment in Res with stacks of cases of empty beer. But they saw something, they saw something much bigger than what we saw, I guess, at the time.
Either that, or you had so many empties that you were going to be able to fund the program for about 10 years. So,
yeah.
But you're right. Like there's 2 things that are required for a sustainable program when you're at an infancy like that. One is vision. You got to be able to see what the potential of everything is. And, vision is something that I think, is one of the more difficult things to kind of instill in people, because they don't always see it. And they want everything there. They are the types of people that need to touch things, feel things, and live things before they believe in it. So if you have vision and then you have belief, then you've got 2 ingredients that are required to get things done in life. And having the vision and then believing in it without, and understanding that those 2 things are not necessarily in the same spot. The vision may be involving a lot of work and a lot of travel down the road, but if you've got the belief to take the steps necessary to get there, you'll achieve that goal. And it might take some left turns, but yeah, you guys really stepped up in the year that you had Donnie and Henry come on. Do you remember during the interview process, what was the decision behind bringing both of them on board?
Well, I think we knew we needed more than one person for sure. Because, just have one person try to manage, a whole team. That's a lot to put on one person. And, when those two guys came in, they were pretty much like, I think we knew right away that these were the two guys that we wanted. Two very different personalities, but those two guys, like almost like the yin and the yang, right? Don was more the, kind of I don't want to say smooth, but he kind of understood the process in terms of being able to kind of finesse and work with the administration, which was definitely something that, we didn't have the capability to do. And, Don having had a business background and, he had a lot more experience in that type of thing. And with Henry, it was just so much his passion for baseball. There's lots of great stories about him, but like the one thing that nobody could ever question was his love for baseball and how much he just wanted to win and he wanted to see us succeed. You get to the park and he's working out in his mesh shirt and he's been there for half an hour, 45 minutes. It's like, how can you not, want to get outworked by him, right? This old guy who is probably younger than us at that time now. But yeah, he's there working away. And, if you wanted him to hit ground balls, man, he would hit you ground balls for hours and hours because like he just loved being at the park. And so it was great just to have that. And, his old school stories were, he had great stories. And so those two guys working together, it was just, even though they're very different, they work so well together. And I think, as much as guys like to tell stories about Hank, he, in a lot of ways, with him and Don, it was just such a good match. I think, in a lot of ways, we got really lucky being able to have those two guys come on board and stick around for so long. And I think with Don, when you talked with Don, one of the things that he talked about was just kind of, and something that we would have never thought of at that time, but just kind of him in a lot of ways guiding us along on the program where he, like you said, he did see that vision and he kind of helped guide us, along the way and really kind of get the team together and kind of get that base of guys who, might not have always been the best guys, but the most guys who were the most committed, the guys who would do anything to support the team, be it on the field, off the field, just trying to keep things going. And, it was really good. It was a really close group, bunch of guys. And I think for me, that's the thing that was, the winning and all that type of stuff was fun. But, I always find it's not so much the games you remember, it's all the stuff around the games that you remember. So even like the night before that game against McGill, we didn't go out. We were all like, that's it. We're not going out. And, Newt's got us watching baseball movies the night before, right? I don't know if it was Field of Dreams or, Bull Durham or whatever, but just to get us in the mood for that game so that we were ready to go. So yeah, it was just a lot of fun having those different, especially from Newt, right? He'd like to have a good time, but he was so focused, right? Like, we're playing this game, we're gonna win. We're not gonna do anything to mess it up. We're gonna get focused by watching, Bull Durham, Field of Dreams, all that type of stuff. It was great. It was just a great experience.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of playing with Billy, so I know that the guy is a flat out great competitor, like a great competitor and an amazing catcher. If you're a pitcher and you want to be on the same page, typically you got to have someone that can think along with you. But everything that Bill did was so instinctual to me, who was not really a thinking type pitcher. He would know exactly how to get the best out of me. And we only had, kind of a half-baked, ridiculous season where we were playing on this ridiculous team in Buffalo. But I just had a ton of fun. But more so, he got the best out of me because he was just, you have to be at a competitive level. And he was always on that way. So great tone setter from that perspective. You remember in 95 now, all of a sudden there's, Brock on the scene, there's U of T on the scene. And these teams don't look like, the early versions of Guelph or the, even Durham College to a certain extent. The teams have really, Coach McRae at Brock and Coach Johnston at U of T, all of a sudden the profile is raised and, now things get pretty serious. Do you remember what your initial thought process was of the new teams that came in '95, and that must have been probably shocking a little bit for you guys to kind of adjust. You got your own culture changing with coaching, like independent coaching, and you've got uniforms that are actually the school colors and a few other things. But now you're stepping onto a field with a team that arrives that's got 6 coaches, darn near 30 players, and is it's a step up for sure. Do you remember what your thoughts were as the league started to get better around you, particularly Brock and U of T at that time?
Yeah, it was great. Like I really, it was fantastic because it goes back to, having known Jay and seeing, it's kind of his vision going, so it's nice to see that, thinking back to Jay and how, this is the things that he wanted to see. But from like a playing perspective, it is amazing, right? Because that competition gets better, it's more intense. You want to always play at a better level. You always want to challenge yourself. So someone coming in and having these teams getting much better, it really makes it more exciting because you're getting a lot of better players in, not only from, into our program because people are talking about it, but playing against Brock and U of T that have good programs, good players. It just really amps up the level of interest. And then, the thing too with Brock is, having been in the area, a lot of kids, from the area that I grew up with playing against, or my brothers, you already start to have that built-in rivalry where you get to the park and you're already chatting and going at guys. And, it just makes it, it makes it, fun, even that much more fun, but it just amps up that intensity level to where it's like, yeah, this is fun. Like we need to really push this. We really need to win. We don't want to lose to these guys. We know these guys. We don't want to listen to them all summer. We want to beat them today so we can chat at them all summer.
Yeah, it's amazing how local bragging rights always make their way into this. So how's school going for you during this time? And you're starting to kind of wind it down as we get into '96, but was it hard to balance school and baseball at the time, or did you really add to your?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. I would say baseball actually helped me with my school in a way because, once we had baseball, especially because I was, kind of in the fall, for me, because we had practice, we had games, we had all that, I really had to set my schedule up to work around baseball and to make sure that I got to class, I had time to do my work, all that type of stuff. So for me, it's like it really got me focused on better organizing my time, using my time. Whereas, when it's the off season, it's like, oh, I got lots of time to do that work. I got lots of time to write that paper. I got lots of time to study. Whereas, when it's in baseball, you have a focused schedule. So for me, it got me in a lot of ways more focused on school and getting things done. And again, because, I was getting to the end of school, starting to focus on, okay, once I finish school, where am I going next? What are going to be my next steps? Because I'm going to have to start a real life after this. So from that perspective, it really helped kind of boost me school-wise and getting concentrated on what I'm going to do after school.
That's great, and I think it adds a lot, right? You learn how to deal with people because you have diverse people on a team, right? And not everyone is, very few people are the same, and it's not all one size fits all for sure in a team environment. And you're dealing with coaches, which are kind of an authority figure, but at times they're also mentors. At times they're also disciplinarians. It preps you for the kinds of supervisors that you might have in your job and that kind of stuff. Shane, so were you always were you playing all over the place for Mac, or were you just pitching? Like, tell me.
So I did, especially in the early days. I did tons of pitching. Like I said, pitched that one weekend, pitched pitched in 2 out of 3 games. But yeah, so I did a lot of pitching, especially in the early days. So Newt and I obviously got to know each other pretty well, spent a lot of time together at the park, but also outside of the park. And a lot of times, him and I were on the same page most of the time. So, I never shook off. That was my thing. If he called the pitch and it got hammered, then it's his fault because he called it, not me. So, the only one I'd say that we've always argued about, there was, we were playing, I think it was at Durham College, and, it's late in the game, and I hung a curveball and it got tattooed out of the park. And, that was that led to the loss of the game. But, Newt always hangs it on me. And I'm like, dude, you're the one that called that curveball. He goes, but I didn't call the hanging curveball. I'm like, well, that's not my best pitch. And so, like, that's the ongoing battle between him and I for probably, 30 years was that one hanging curveball. So he blames it on me because I didn't hit the spot, but I blame it on him because he called it. So, but yeah,
it's just classic pitcher catcher banter, right?
Yeah.
It is. And, I've talked a lot about the lack of a changeup. Never had a changeup. And I had a catcher call that in an OBA semifinal once, puts down the three fingers, and I shook it off once, shook it off twice, and they put it down again, and, emphatically. So I threw it, and I gave a 2-run bomb on it. And from there on in, if I would shake someone off twice, I'd call them out at that point and say, let's have a chat. Because, sometimes you just know, right? You know that the pitch selection is wrong as a pitcher, and you're fighting that instinct to be cooperative or collaborative with your catcher. But I think you always have to go 100% of the time with, as a pitcher, what is it that I want to throw in this moment? Because that's the one that I feel that I can do the best with.
Yeah.
And when you don't have the conviction behind the pitch, sometimes you'll hang a curveball, right? Because you're just trying to guide it a little bit more than letting it rip. So it's hilarious that you guys are still fighting over that 30 years later.
I know, it is funny though. And again, that's, the things that you remember is, again, just the small things that, it's a stupid thing that happened how many years ago. And it's one of those things that is etched in your mind forever. I remember a guy crushed it, just crushed it. And what can you do? But yeah, just in terms of position wise, like a lot of growing up, through, pitch, and then through a midget, bantam, junior, senior, all that type of stuff. I mostly, I pitched, of course, but I also played short and a second. So played the middle infield, played a little bit of third, but mostly the infield. When I came up with Mac, I was pitching. Trev Lawson started at short, and then he moved over to third, and I was playing short. So I think my last game of under Donnie, I think I ended up actually in the season playing every position. And I think I had to get in the first base, the last game of the year. But that last year I got to play a little bit of everything, because at that point we were getting not a new talent in it, and a lot of talent that was better than me coming in. So I wasn't doing as much on the field wise, still doing some pitching, but it was great just to have that experience. And to Don, in a lot of ways, just kind of recognize that, in that last game, to kind of get me that, extra position. This was something I didn't even remember, but my dad brought up the other day, because my dad, he used to come out to a lot of games, not as much as Rich Lunny, but my dad came out to a lot of games. So just for my dad to kind of remember that, I'm like, oh yeah, that was pretty awesome of Don to remember that, to do that through the season.
Those touches as a coach make a huge difference. They just do, and they fire your teammates up. And I remember when my career was coming to a close in Oshawa Junior, the coach sent me up to hit, which, for anyone who knew me, I was A, petrified of doing, B, horrendous at, but it was just a little sign of respect at the end of the year. And being an idiot and being left-handed, I was trying to get ejected in my last game. So the first pitch comes right down the middle, and the umpire says strike, and I just start cursing at him, and I'm like, that was a ball. What are you, blind? And it was right down the middle. And he said to me, Mike, no matter what you do, I'm not ejecting you. So just take your hacks. You've had a great career in junior here, and away we go. So I was trying like crazy. I think I dropped an F-bomb. I called him the wizard, but it was 3 straight pitches down the middle, and my junior career was over. But it's great when coaches do that, right? And because it fires up your teammates, and that's a good sign of respect there, Shane.
Yeah, and I think, not only for me, it felt great for him to, do that and show that respect, but I think it also shows the other guys what kind of a coach that, coaches that Don and Hank were, to kind of recognize those types of things. And they talked about, Don talked about Jeff Ake, who was like phenomenal guy, like the hardest working guy, and people just, recognize the respect that Don had for a guy like that who worked so hard. And I know Jeff got an award one year. I can't remember what it was, but it was just, kind of because he was the guy, right, that worked hard, did those things for the team. Like just a great teammate, just a great guy. So pitching. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, speaking of great teammates, I just wanted to hit you up, obviously, given that we were tied to the McMaster side of things, about what your thoughts were playing with Brad Reese.
Yeah, so Brad was a great player. I remember because I think he was there I think it was my last year. So I didn't really get to play with him a lot, but I just remember everybody saying, okay, yeah, we got this guy coming in. He's going to be awesome. He's going to hit, he's going to field, all that type of stuff. So it was like, because, from what I heard, there's, he was kind of hesitant to come into the program. He didn't really know what he was getting into. So for him to come out, it was really nice again, just to kind of see that recognition of, people recognizing that the program is good, the program's going forward, and just seeing him play, just how much he enjoyed it. Just a quiet guy, but just, almost like, like a professional. Like he was already a professional, in a lot of ways, in his mindset and the way he worked and the way he did things. So it was like he set a good example for a lot of guys. So it was, for me, it was just nice to see somebody come in and do that and have so much respect so fast from his teammates, from his coaches, and for him just to be such a good person and a good guy, and for what he did after, as a teacher and as a coach. It's great to hear stories like that, about such good people.
Yeah, they stand out in a dressing room a little bit. You guys were on a team that was built on character, so I think everyone has their own amazing story and moment in the sun that they carry from that. But having played with him for several years, Brad just had this always twinkle in his eye and was hilarious as a teammate. He would do things that would shock you sometimes because it'd be kind of like super funny, and he would just be kind of aw shucks about it.
It was kind of stealth sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. He would. Yeah, he has this pretty funny story, and I can tell it now, obviously, because we know that Brad's passed away. But Oshawa, there were 4 or 5 of us that would go out. 5, maybe it was a little bit more, 6 or 7 of us actually, that would go out fairly regularly to an alternative. It was an old theater that played alternative dance music called the Siren. So there was a big balcony, and there was bars there, and then there was a dance floor and bars all around it. It was tons of fun. But my poor friend Jay Lesh would always be walking behind Brad as we would kind of like in a procession go to get a beer or whatever. We'd end up at one of these bars. But he would always, like, if there were girls walking the other way, Brad would like tick them on the shoulder and then point to Jay every time. And and the one time he kind of did it, the girl got mad, and Jay, and he points at Jay. She looks at Jay, and I don't know whether I'd have to ask him, but I think she either dumped a drink on him or like whacked him back, right? Like, and then Brad was just killing himself laughing because it was all him, right? And that was just him. He was a little bit of a Dennis the Menace type character, and you need those kinds of people that keep it fun and keep it loose, and because he also was just a killer on the field. You knew he was going to roll out of bed and hit 400. It was just a matter of how many of them would end up in the gap, or like that kind of stuff. So good guy to have as a teammate, and obviously a big motivator behind what we're doing. Yeah, Shane, exactly. What comes next for you, just in terms of your involvement with McMaster, your education and life?
Yeah, so I finished school, got my degree, was hoping to go to teachers college, and at that point I came out of school with like a lot of people, a big whack of student loan. So I figured, okay, I got to start working to get some money here to start paying this off, and got into kind of fitness industry doing, personal training and that type of stuff. And, from there was a lot of people where I worked that were in the medical device industry and work in pharma and that type of stuff. They just said, hey, like, you should look at getting into this. They said, it's a great job. It's a great career. You have a great background for it with your kinesiology degree. You have a good, personality for it. So I'm like, okay, tell me about this. I didn't know anything about it. And so they started telling me about it. So some of those people started kind of mentoring me and, just basically passed things on. It's like, okay, we heard, we know this opportunity is coming up. You may want to, contact this person. So in a lot of ways, I just kind of fell into the medical device industry. And, that's kind of how I got into it. Been in 25 plus years now, I guess. But at that time, I was still playing, senior ball. Like I said, we were, small center. So we were like, I think we were a D center. But we played, I'd run into, so McGrail was, with his Wyoming team. We used to run into each other at tournaments all the time because we were pretty much the same size centers. But, playing in the Coba League, I'd run into guys like, playing against Pino, who was with Etobicoke, or, Andrew Dawes, or Dexter playing in Oakville. So it was nice to be able to, still be in contact with some of these guys, and then playing with some of the younger guys like, like Grilly and Brad Arms, trying to, them keeping me up to speed on what's going on. I was still able to have some contact with those guys and, still, pitching. I think, we won 3 or 4, senior D Ontario championships. It might not sound like the most glorious being a D, but it was, there's still a lot of really good teams and a lot of good players in those leagues. But, playing in Cobo was a pretty good league, a lot of good players, a lot of good teams. So it was nice to be able to, continue on playing. I was lucky enough to go into the Cobo Hall of Fame, which was pretty cool. But it was just, a lot of fun to just keep playing until, you get to that point where the body just aches too much. There's a lot guy, there's guys who are just better than you that should be playing. And, even just kind of hanging around for a couple of years after that, just helping, coaching and supporting the team and that type of stuff. That was, a lot of fun. But it also got harder too. Like I said, the body starts to hurt more. I had to have a rotator cuff surgery, so I couldn't pitch anymore. I couldn't play short anymore, so I played second, which I loved. But it's just, it gets to that point. And again, career and family and all those things kind of prop up. But always keeping my ear and eyes on the team to kind of see what's going on, what's happening. My dad was, pretty instrumental in, my brothers and my sister and I growing up and being involved in us sports wise. He coached us, coached my brothers, coached my sister when she's playing fastball. So because he was, always close to the program, he would always just go and watch games and, give me the update. He'd be talking to the guys that he sees. We'd bump into Arms at the mall or whatever. So he's always up to date, or he'd say, oh yeah, I saw Jess Dixon and this is what he's doing now. So, he was always into it. So it's just like one of those things, always kind of stay up to speed on what was going on.
That's great. And so Shane, what, at some point you get into the medical device industry, you've got a lot of things going on, you're playing a lot. When does a family enter into this equation? And is that before or during your globe trotting?
Yeah. So I started a little bit before doing the traveling stuff, before I got married, before I met my wife. So it was good because she kind of knew what was going on in my life and how important baseball was, to me and my family and, a lot of the friends that I saw, on a weekly basis and that type of stuff. So, so that was good that she really understood that. When my, son came along, it made it a little bit harder just because, playing senior ball is pretty busy, a couple games a week and practice and going around and then, work, like you said, kind of jetting off, into Europe and across Canada. So, it made it a little bit challenging, especially with, a young kid at home. And then, again, it's coming up at that point is where it's like, okay, I still really like this and enjoy this, but, my priorities need to change. So, it kind of changed that way. And it was great. Like I said, it was time to focus on other things. But very funny is, my son has no interest in baseball, no interest in playing hockey at all. which is interesting, but it's actually taught me a lot of things in a different way. So, growing up in our family, everything was so competitive, right? You got 5 kids, you're fighting for the last slice of pizza or the last piece of cake or whatever, right? And every game you're keeping track of the score, whether you're playing road hockey or you know 21 in the backyard. Like everything was keeping score. Everybody had to have a winner. So my son, like that's not his thing. He's not into baseball. He loves watching it. He comes out to every single one of my co-ed softball games because he likes hanging out, going to the bar after with the team. But he's into curling and he loves it because it's a social game and it's competitive, but it's not super competitive. He really likes the strategy behind it. And it's great because, for me, he's got an activity that he can do till he's 100, like, playing co-ed softball or playing beer league hockey. So it's great. And for him, like just doing like an activity, he's happy just to go out for a hike and do a 5-10K hike. And you can still enjoy that activity, but also enjoying nature. It doesn't have to be a competition. So for me, it's great because it just taught me to really enjoy. You can really enjoy things without having a score attached to it, and still stay active and still be doing things socially. So for me, it's been great just to kind of learn something different than what I was so used to and was so ingrained into my personality. So for me, like I said, it's been great. It's been great to be, great to be a dad. You learn so many things that you would never think you could learn from a kid when they're, a year old to now when he's 15 years old. You're always learning something from them. And hopefully you can teach them something as well that they're actually going to listen to.
Yeah,
It's just funny, like now you think, you're in university, high school, whatever, and your parents tell you something and you think they're the dumbest people in the world, but as you get older you realize they were actually right about a lot of things, and I probably should have listened to them a little bit more, and I didn't know nearly as much as I thought I knew.
Yeah, it's and your most amazing years are still you're still tracking them down, because you're gonna have to, and the things that we want to give to our kids are interesting too. Both my kids, my youngest who's 19, is off at university playing varsity soccer. And you would think that because we were all so competitively boiled and we really went hard at it, that my advice would be, to train harder or to, do this or do that. But I'm always the reverse. I'm like, enjoy your university experience. Get out and do some of the crazy, partying and get some of that out of your system and understand that there's a role for all these things in a well-balanced life, because, your memories of Montreal will be a lot different if you wouldn't have, maybe gone. I think you guys went out on the Friday night from what I recall. And,
We might have gone out on Saturday too. I don't even remember.
Like I think it's important because those are the things. It's the social aspect that is harder for kids now at university. They don't have those same things. Some of it's been banned, obviously, or curtailed. But I think it's important that they understand that how you bond with people and how you connect with people and have a little bit of fun with it. Not everything needs to be a selfie or shot onto YouTube, that's for sure. But it's the way that you learn about yourself. You learn as much about yourself as you do about others when you do that. Shane, what's it like being like, you have lots of siblings, obviously, and a very tight family. I assume that you guys still are doing a lot of things together, or are your siblings spread all over the place? Are you guys all kind of like...
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. So it's in some ways it's tough, especially when COVID came up. My sister lives close by, so I'm in Burlington. My sister's in Hamilton, and my dad's still in Binbrook, so which is great. So they're still pretty close. Monday nights, in the summer, my sister and I still play softball together. So it's great on Monday nights to see her and to do things with her. And we got my dad coming out every Monday to keep him busy. My dad plays old timer softball twice a week in the summer. He's 79, and still playing twice a week. So it's fantastic that he's got that. But my brothers all live live out west in BC. So one of my brothers in New Westminster, so he's just outside Vancouver, and then two of my brothers are on the island up in Comox. So it's tough to get to see them often. Definitely would like to see them more, and especially over COVID. My one brother had a daughter over COVID, so I haven't been able to see her yet. My other brother has twin boys, so obviously don't get to see them as much as I'd like to. But it's great to hear the things that they're doing, because they're two of my brothers are so close together. They're probably 5 minutes apart, and hearing the things that they do, and pushing my parents to get out there and visit and see them, to see their grandchildren. It's nice to hear the time that they get to spend with my dad, because my sister and I are lucky in that we're close together in terms of geography with my parents. So it's nice for us, but it's also really nice then for him to go out and see his other grandkids and my brothers, which he doesn't get to do very often, my parents. So it's great that way as well. But yeah, I'd definitely like to be able to spend more time with them. But it was fun, growing up with them in a competitive family. For me, it was really fun to play with my brothers when I got to get a chance to play with my brothers when you get into, junior and senior. So it was a lot of fun. I just remember playing one game with my brother, Mark. We played together for quite a number of years, and he's 5 or 6 years younger than me. I should know how old he is, but he was playing short and I was playing second. And, I played with the senior team for a number of years, and a bunch of the guys that he was playing with were now, playing with us as well. And I just remember a pop up on the infield, just behind second base, and all the guys who I play with are yelling, Toohey, take it, Toohey, take it. And all his friends are yelling, Toohey, take it, Toohey, take it. And then we're both just looking at each other because we don't know which Toohey's going to take it. And it basically drops right between us. So we just kind of some of those fun stories playing, and, getting to see him pitch and do well, getting to play with him, turning double plays with your brother. It's just, it's a different, unique experience to be able to play, with your brothers at different ages, and, just kind of see them grow too, as, being the oldest. And, I'm 11 years older than my sister, watching her growing up. And, sometimes I think it was tough for her when she was, in high school. She's in grade 9, and, her, one of her brothers is on the baseball team. Her brother and her dad are coaching the baseball team. So not only does she have an older brother in the school, she's got 16 other brothers on the baseball team, and two, a dad and a brother. So, she didn't have a lot of,
you guys cramped.
She had a lot of protection.
You guys cramped her style, didn't you? Big time.
We definitely did. But that being said, she grew up playing. She's an amazing softball player. She's an amazing, woman. She takes no crap from anybody. It's, she's just an awesome, awesome person.
Yeah, it's amazing. So Shane, you get to travel a fair chunk. So why don't we start with your favorite place you've been, and then buddy that up with the worst place you've been, because
probably my favorite place I've been to is to Italy. I didn't get a lot of time to spend there, so I definitely want to go. The good thing about doing some of those trips over there, it's good and it's bad. It's good that you get to go see a lot of great places. The bad is, a lot of times you're only there for, a couple days for meeting wise. So I tried to take advantage as much as I could in terms of, tacking on a couple days here and there. So when I was in Rome, it was fantastic. I'd like to see some of the other parts of Italy. So I think that's going to be one of our big family vacations that's going to come up at some point, is doing, maybe doing Italy for a couple weeks. Same thing with Portugal. I'd really like to go back there. I only got to spend a day or two there. So those are two places I definitely want to go. I really I really enjoyed Paris. That was a great place. Like to spend some more time in France. But yeah, I got to see lots of places, lots of different places in the UK, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Amsterdam, like all over the place. So lots of great places, lots of places across Canada. So yeah, so lots of great places. But yeah, those are probably Italy. It's probably my number one for now. Definitely want to go back to. And then in terms of the worst,
I've been to, and there's no offense to the great people in Manitoba, but for work, I used to have to go to Winnipeg a fair chunk.
I've been there.
And, it may not be in my top 10 list of places to visit.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. A lot of time, I used to have to go to Manitoba. I used to go to the same thing, Winnipeg, in the middle of, in January. It's not the ideal place you want to go. And a lot of times I would get like the first flight into Winnipeg and whatever flight I could get out. So I was going in and out in the same day. And no offense to Winnipeg, the people there are fantastic. But yeah, I did spend a lot of time there when I was there.
Yeah, I still have a good friend who was on Winnipeg City Council and ran for mayor actually. But I just used to say to him, when you come in and it's winter, it looks just gray. Everything looked gray coming down from the sky there, and it was colder than hell, and kind of felt like a bit under siege from the weather. So. Shane,
but there's so many good places, not only, outside of Canada, but I don't think we realize how many great places we have to visit in Canada. And again, just like you having that ability to travel to all these different places through work, it really gives you appreciation, of what we have in Canada, the different places, how great the people are, and just how many things there are to do. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's super friendly. I mean, I joked with Don Graves and his podcast about him, learning to host a kitchen party on the East Coast, and he kindly informed me that he's learning to play the fiddle or some such thing. But like people are so welcoming, right? They're happy to meet new people, particularly coming out of COVID, where we had this period of being isolated. It's great to get back to seeing people, to being able to read their reactions to things, to not, it's just more genuine. And we all, there's a big portion of us who really crave genuine connection with people, and both professionally and personally, more so, seeing friends, seeing their kids grow up. It's amazing.
Even last year, we just did a family road trip, and it wasn't something, we did, and it was, it's going to sound funny, but, you got to remember last year my son was 14, you hear the word Uranus, it's, the funniest word in the world. So there's a town in, where the heck was it? Just outside Springfield, Illinois, or not Illinois, Missouri, Uranus. So we went to Uranus for vacation. That's how we based our whole trip, was going to Uranus. And like the big tourist attraction in Uranus is the Fudge Factory. And it was just...
Are you kidding me?
I am just dead serious. The two things are the Fudge Factory, and they have the world's largest belt buckle. So that's how we... Yeah, I know.
Sounds like a sequel to National Lampoon's Vacation, where they, you add in the world's largest ball of twine, and there you go.
Yeah,
so
but it was great. But then, like, you build it around. So we went into Indiana, and there's this fabulous, aquarium there. We went to the biggest Bass Pro Shop in the world. We got to go to Indianapolis Speedway. We got to go see some minor league games. We got to tour Busch Stadium, and just doing those types of things. It was fantastic. And so to kind of build on that, we're doing another road trip this year. And thanks to my dad, he's found a place for us to go in Intercourse, Pennsylvania. So just build on Uranus for going to Intercourse.
Okay. Yeah. You might need to save the stories of Intercourse, Pennsylvania for when we get together to play this game of horrendous 50-year-olds trying to recapture their youth. But I won't even start to go down that rabbit hole because I can't imagine, But I think it's super cool that you did something like that was very customized because, you thought it would be cool for your son, and probably for all three of you, you're just kind of giggling away. And, that's a lot more memorable, I think, and because of the detail and the thought that goes into it, than just booking a all-inclusive for 5 days and laying around on a beach in Mexico or Cuba.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Shane, these kind of bring back these ideas that we're all going to be getting together after 30 years. Do you still maintain some relationships with some of your teammates? And are there some folks that you really want to get caught up with because you haven't seen them, since you left Matt?
Yeah, I don't really get to see the guys too often. I got to see them more often when I was still playing. 'Cause like I said, I used to bump into McGrail all the time, and you know, just seeing the guys during Coba, I got to see lots of guys still playing. Just every once in a while, I'll see guys here and there. But yeah, can't wait to get to see, a lot of these guys that I haven't seen in years. Some of them because, like I played with Grilly for a while, and he was, much younger than I am, so he was able to keep me up to speed on a lot of things, or Arms, he was able to keep me up to speed. So, I got to just kind of, keep it up to speed on what was happening with a lot of the guys. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to catch up. I'm not sure how many guys are going to be there. I'd love to see everybody, but some of those really early guys, like Greg Carter and his little red Civic, like Steve Groh, and then just the guys that we saw, all the guys like Newt and Cooper and Joey Davis and Trev Lawson and McGrail and Hoots and everybody that I play with. I just loved to get a chance just to catch up, see what they're doing. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and to even see like some of the Brock guys that I know, just to see what they're doing, and again do the poking and jabbing and seeing what we can do as 52-year-old for me. So
Yeah, I think Shane, it's and I said this early on. These programs can do the standard paint by numbers types of things like golf tournaments and come on out and have a drink kind of barbecue type stuff, but that doesn't get people out of bed. Okay, and I say that because the lives are busy. We have commitments, and if your option is take your wife and kids to a Jays game on a weekend and visit with your in-laws or whatever, we do lots of golf. We do lots of barbecues with people that we've been around with for, the last 10 years, never mind 30 years ago. And while that's a good novelty, to just go do something that's standard doesn't cut it. But, I know the mind of a baseball player because I have one. I might be left-handed and pitcher, so that makes me a freak. But there is an allure to putting on a uniform again and going and playing, allowing our kids to see what it is we used to do. And we're doing it for a couple of really good causes, right? At the end of the day, we have a recent memorial scholarship that allows McMaster to, hopefully go out, recruit and retain some better players in the program by giving them some scholarship money. And on the Brock side, everyone's going to get an opportunity to meet a guy named Todd Nye, who is just, I don't have words for what a great guy Todd is. But he lost his sight in his eye thanks to a freak accident in our first year playing. And this will be the first time he'll be able to pitch in front of his wife and kids. He's a principal up in the Barrie area, just is a great leader of people. So, I think that there's some real appeal to getting in there and, taking a couple hacks for, and enjoying a whole weekend of programming. But you've gone through a rotator cuff surgery. You beat up. Recreational slow pitch is the death of all of us. I have 3 knee surgeries thanks to it. Hopefully the team is just not a whole bunch of second baseman, first baseman, and left fielders, right? Because that's kind of what we could end up looking like.
We need to shorten the bases. I think shorten the pitcher.
Pickleball for baseball, right? That's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah, because I think that's what I'm really curious to see is who can throw it the furthest without wrecking themselves. How many pulled hamstrings and torn groins are there going to be?
Well, Shane, at the mound, you might end up being the cutoff man for the throws from third to and short over to first, right? That's how this could go.
It very well could. And how many knee braces are going to be out there? So the speed, you might be able to do that cutoff because guys might not have the speed they once had.
Yeah, I don't think stolen bases are going to happen. Because I don't know how many of the pitchers are going to be able to, really throw it 60 feet 6 inches with any kind of snap anymore. I don't know how many catchers can even, we may have to get one of those stools for the catchers to sit on. And then, how many of them are going to be able to throw it from the plate to second base, right? Like it's all that stuff that's kind of fun and curious. But the good thing is, either there is a magic to being in a dugout with people that you have shared that experience with before. So, we'll work on making sure that as many of those pioneers of the McMaster program are there as possible. And we'll have ourselves something that's going to provide another 30 years of memories. And by that time, most of us probably won't remember. So,
well, yeah. And like you said, like the shared experience, and it's not just, the shared experience for us as a Mac team, your guys' shared experience, as a Brock team, but also our shared experiences as two programs battling each other. So there's a lot of good connection, just, the proximity, it's going to be a fun shared experience. And like you said, too, it's also going to be fun for our families to see, some of the people that we've talked about, or seeing that, my wife and my sons, I don't know if they always realize, some of the things that we did and how we played and where we played. And, we're not just old guys playing co-ed softball or old timers hockey. We were actual athletes at one point, we could actually run a little bit and we could throw.
This is why some of us have started jogging very slowly to get back into some semblance of shape, so that we, aren't a complete fraud, when our kids are sitting there busting us and going, "Oh my God, Dad, you suck."
Yeah.
Like that part's fun too. But I think it's also, these podcasts will help fill in the blanks for some people, and it'll be just fun to say, "Oh, that's your these are your kids," or that you talk about, or like, I think all those things are priceless. And it kind of helps with the stage in life that I've talked about a little bit. But it's not easy for guys when they turn about 45 to they're in around 60. It's a time when they're struggling a little bit with their identities, and go through some changes a lot. It gives us a chance to kind of remind everybody that we're all teammates. We're teammates until the end. And that part is the part that brings the biggest smile on my face. So, Shane, we're really looking forward to it. And, hopefully your dad will come out along with the...
Oh, he'll come out, I'm sure.
The 9,000 Lunnies that'll be in the, it'll be a home game for McMaster, even though we're playing in St. Catharines. And, we look forward to seeing you, and you and I all get caught up in back of this, because there's a little bit of work to do yet, but we're really rapidly advancing towards something special. And I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. This is fantastic. And thanks for all the work you've been doing on this. These podcasts have been fantastic, super enjoyable to watch. And, all the work you've put in behind the scenes, I don't think people realize how much you have done. So, thank you very much. If there's anything, I can do to support, just let me know. I'd be happy to help. Like I said, I'm in the area still. So, thanks again.
The smell of grass.